Rachel Rose here for Martial Arts Mindset. And on today's episode, I'm going to share with you a little bit about my story, how I've ended up in the boxing world, and my absolute love and passion for this sport, how it came to be. And just to sort of showcase that you don't need to be a traditional type of way to love the sport, get into the sport. You don't have to get into the sport from childhood, and just share the sort of journey that I've been on that's led me to this beautiful, violent environment that I love so much. My journey started as a singer-songwriter when I was very young. I was in singing lessons from the age of 10, and it just sort of, sparked something in me. I wanted to sing. That was the only thing I wanted to do. And so I had singing lessons from the age of 10 to 16. Joined a choir from 16 to 21, where I did a lot of massive performances, TV shows, that kind of thing. And then from 21 onwards, I just went into the professional world, really focused on being a solo artist, wrote albums, singles, sung at Hammersmith Apollo, sung at Wembley, sang at Glastonbury, was on The Voice, and I did a lot of very cool things with my career and had a really good trajectory actually. And I also got into writing music for film and acting in film and all of these amazing and very cool things. I've lived at quite a few lifetimes already. And that was the only thing I wanted to do. That was it. And then when COVID hit, obviously it put a stopper on quite a few things, including and very dominantly the creative industries, the performance industries, gigs and shows and things like that were some of the last things to come back alive. And that was really tough. So there was a lot of reevaluation going on through that time and also a lot of soul searching. Um, Backtrack. When I was 18, I went to university in Portsmouth and I was a dancer. So I was already sort of singing, performing. I was actually traveling back and forward from university to perform at different shows and go to rehearsals and stuff like that. I was never really someone who was just like in one place. I was always kind of every Tuesday I would commute back from Portsmouth to Surrey to go to rehearsals and things like that because, I knew what I wanted to achieve. So I was like, well, this is what I've got to do. And I've always been a bit like that. And in that first year of university, I was a dancer, but I went into hospital the first couple of weeks that I went to uni and didn't come out for a couple of weeks. So it was the first literally 3 weeks of being at uni, and it was this one night my ex-boyfriend had come up to stay with me, and a rash or something had appeared on my leg, so I took an antihistamine, and then I started convulsing and I fell unconscious, and then I woke up in an ambulance, and then I fell unconscious again, and then I woke up in the hospital, and they basically said I'd had an allergic reaction to the tablet, and that the convulsions would just stop within 12 24 hours, and they didn't. They got worse. So I went back home on the Monday, and this was like this Saturday. I went back home on the Monday, and got mum took me into hospital and then didn't come out for a couple of weeks. They thought I had a brainstem infection and all these things, and it was a horrible time. And they never got to the bottom of any of the results because they did a lumbar puncture, which is where they extract spinal fluid, and honestly, one of the most painful things I've ever done. And then they lost the results, so never found out the results of those. My specialist didn't come to see me for like 5 days, and I had this skin thing that was happening and got really bad. Oh God, it was just awful. And then when I came out of hospital, I started to just faint all the time, just black out. And it would come on like a rush, like this like whoosh feeling. My heart would like start racing, and I couldn't breathe, and I'd get really dizzy and just hit the deck. And sometimes I'd be out cold for like 20 minutes and would just constantly wake up in ambulances. So this is all happening in my first year of university, and I was in and out of hospitals, lost all my confidence, but I did still keep dancing. And one of the things that we did was we were quite close with the boxing team at the uni, and they asked us to perform at one of the home shows where we would like dance in the ring. And I used to watch WWE, well, it was WWF when I was little. Became WWE later on, but it was WWF when I was little. Used to watch that all the time with my uncle over in Ireland, and so I'd never stepped through a set of ropes, but I always like was excited by the prospect of it. But I'd never seen really been paid much attention to boxing. I knew of it, but I wasn't really an avid fan. I didn't come from a boxing family. But it was just really cool to be a part of the show and entertain people. And we had to make up dance routines that would face like in a circle outwards. Everyone got to see the routine and everything. And that was the first time I ever saw a fight live. And really, it was the only first time I'd ever really watched boxing. And I was like, wow. And I don't know what it was, but I just connected to the sport. I just thought this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I was sat next to some of the boys in the boxing team, and I was like, "What does that mean? What does that mean? And what are they doing? And what's the ref doing?" And da da da. And they must have just. I've never met them before. These are the first time I'd met these boys, and they were probably just like, "Shut up!" And I was like, "I just want to know everything." And it it started there, a sort of a buzz that I'd sort of felt for the sport, but I never, ever, ever in a million years thought that I would do it. I thought it was just something that I would kind of get a kick out of, and that would be that. Anyway, fast track through that year, and I'm in a bad way. I'm fainting all the time. No one knows what's wrong with me, and I'm with this boyfriend, and I'm spending a lot of time at home, barely at uni, just there for like the things like my lectures that I had to go to and rehearsals because I love dance. And anyway, through the summer, just before I go back to university, the boyfriend breaks up with me. And I was a quite a stubborn mule. I've probably got, I lost that along the way and I've got it back again. But, I was just like, cool, well, if you're going to break up with me, you better make sure it's the right choice because this is it. And took my broken heart back to university where I just threw myself into the uni life because I didn't really get to experience it the first time around because I was just well, I just kept fainting all the time. And I thought the second year was going to be another year like that. But the hospitals had done hundreds of tests on me, and all they could conclude was I had anxiety. And I was like, what I do now, because I'm anxious, because I keep fainting, but that's not why I'm fainting. But nobody listened. And I was like, so I toddled off for some cognitive behavioral therapy to deal with the anxiety that I didn't have, and met a specialist. And this was a specialist who was a specialist in my condition, which was kind of serendipitous. And I am a God-fearing woman now. And I'm like, thank you, big man. Thank you for sending him in my direction. But it was really weird because I was like, oh, I told him everything. And I was like, oh, I get these feelings, these symptoms. This is what happens to me. Apparently, I've got anxiety. And he was like, no, and did one test and was like, ta-da, this is the problem. So the condition is called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And it impacts your circulatory system, it impacts your respiratory system, it impacts your nervous system, it impacts your digestive system. And it's basically your vagus nerve, which is like in your neck, it which controls like your fight and flight and your systems and all that kind of stuff. Mine's broke, and in its brokenness, it means that my system can't function at this full whack. So it means that my heart can't pump blood properly around the body. It means that my blood pressure goes out of whack. And imagine just like, when you've got too many things going on in your computer and it gets overheated and everything just starts to glitch and then the system needs to shut down for a bit to reboot. That's me. And he put me on medication and I was, oh my God, I cried. I was like, oh my God, there's something actually wrong with me. And I, that was kind of a relief. But obviously, then the next part of the journey is learning to figure it out. And I started the medication, started to feel better quite quickly, but I was in this kind of rebellious phase because I've just gone through my first ever breakup and I was like, I'm going to live my life. And I was partying quite a lot and drinking quite a lot. And I remember going to see my specialist and I was like, yeah, every time I go out drinking, I keep blacking out. And he was like, okay, what are you drinking? And I was like, double vodka Red Bulls, because back in those days, a double vodka Red Bull was £1.50. Yeah, dangerous. So I was drinking sort of, 4 or 5 of those and ending up in an ambulance most Monday nights. And I was like, I don't want to stop living my life. And he was like, oh, maybe just stop drinking that drink because he was like, vodka slows your heart down. Red Bull speeds your heart up. Your medication slows your heart down. I was like, maybe stop drinking that drink. And I actually did have a really good year. I mean, I was blacking out still quite a lot, but in terms of understanding of my condition, all I did really at this point was rebel. I didn't want to be the girl with a problem anymore. I just took the diagnosis and kind of was like, I can do anything, no one's going to stop me. Fuck you, ex-boyfriend, etc., etc. And around this time, and the reason I'm telling you all of this because it has purpose, is I my friend in the boxing team who I'd met the previous year was like, "Hey, do you want to come down to the boxing gym?" And I was like, that sounds sensational. He was like, we want to get more girls down. Come join us. And I was like, okay, sounds fun. So group of girls, we went down, and I didn't really think anything of it. I just thought it'd be fun to do, and we had a bit of a laugh. But I kind of took it really seriously, and I was like, I want to be good. I want to. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. But like, I'm going to do it properly. I'm a bit like that. Like when I did like a Tough Mudder, I was like, if I'm going in, I'm going all in. Like, I came out head to toe in mud. And I went to the gym, and I was on the pads with the head coach, and he went, "How long have you been boxing for?" And I was like, 20 minutes. And he went, "No, no, not this class, in life." And I was like, 20 minutes. And he was like, "I want to train you up for the Women's Amateur Championships." And I was like, sick. And at this point, blissful naivety was carrying me. But I was just, if I'm honest, I was just so happy that I was good at sport. Because if you want to go backtrack to me as a little kid, I wasn't sporty. I didn't find, I was a dancer and I was a singer, but I wasn't like sporty. And I always felt quite humiliated in like PE and stuff, like as a little kid. When I got into like GCSEs and stuff, I was all right, but I never thought that I was good at sport. And I had eating issues from quite young and body issues from quite young and things like that. So to be kind of considered good at a sport to me was like, oh shit, I'm good at this. Like it felt good. It felt really good. And especially a sport like boxing that I had been really interested in. Anyway, so I was like, okay, yeah, train me up. And I was like, oh, I have just been diagnosed with this condition, so let me just take it to my specialist and just make sure that that's okay. But I was like, he never says no to anything, which he doesn't. So he never says no to anything, so I'm sure it'll be fine. And he was like, cool, cool, cool. Anyway, went to see my specialist, and he was like, no, not in a million years, ever, no. And I was really shocked because he never said no to anything. So I was like, okay, well, that's just peed in my cornflakes. So I was like pushing it a little bit, like, come on, like it can't be that bad. And he gave me a list of reasons why it could be that bad. And then he was like, also, England will never sign off your medical. ABA will never sign off your medical. No one's going to sign off your medical with a heart problem. And I was like, cool. And it didn't really make any sense to me at the time because I thought, wow, why would I be given this thing that I'm really like naturally I have clearly have an affinity for and then not be allowed to do it? But I just, you let it go. But what I tried to do was just keep the training going because I enjoyed it. Um, when I left university, I stopped boxing, focused on the singing, focused on just lifting weights, running. I did other things. Every now and again, I'd like hit some pads or go into a boxing gym, remember how much I love it, and then think, oh, I've got to keep doing this. And I think I had this like blocker because I was like, well, what's the point? Because I don't get to do it. At least with running, I could like decide I was going to run a marathon, then I'd go run a marathon, which I did, Dublin Marathon, if you're asking. And but with boxing, it was like I felt frustrated. Um, I think I hadn't really dealt with the fact that I was kind of rejecting. I was very angry at my condition. I hadn't really dealt with it. I had a lot of fear around my condition, but I was very angry at my condition because I also thought that my ex-boyfriend broke up with me because I was sick. Turns out he was cheating on me with my best friend. Top tier fella. And she's a knobhead as well. Um, but yeah, I thought that I thought it was, I was frustrated. I was frustrated and I was like, well, what's the point? Anyway, dabbled in and out, did other things for fitness, was pushing my music career. Then went through another bad breakup, another guy that cheated, and this one was worse. And I know, worse than cheating on you with your best friend. Wild. Um, but I was really bummed. As you can imagine, I was not in a great way. Breakups are horrible. And I was like, I need to go back to boxing. It's like I remember that's the one thing that makes me happy. Like it just makes me feel good. Anyway, I walked into a new gym, never been to this gym before. This was back in my hometown. And I was on the bag for the first few rounds. And the coach comes over and goes, how long you been boxing for? And I was like, have we gone back in time? And I said, oh, well, I boxed a bit at uni and, I've dabbled over the years. And he was like, I want to train you up to fight. And I was like, this is really weird. And I was like, well, look, I was told no all those years ago, but it's much better now, and I'm on medication, and maybe they'll let me, maybe they'll let me. Anyway, he spoke to the doctor and said, could we get her signed off? And the doctor said no. And I was like, right, okay. So I stayed training with them for a bit more. But again, I just felt frustrated. So I sort of drifted away, went back to weightlifting, went back to running, really focused on the music. Life was just lifing as it does. And I think there was this real frustration. I think I felt out of control as well. So I sort of rejected something. Anyway, come 2020, obviously, at this point, the world has exploded. And I had to do a lot of soul searching during that time, figure myself out. The journey had been a interesting one, and I think I'd lost my way quite a lot actually. I just before COVID blew up, I was in a really great, I was in inverted commas, a really great place. I'd moved to London. I was in a relationship with someone I really liked, and or it was like the early days, but I was like, yeah, this is this, and I had a new music manager, and we were writing new tunes, and like a movie I just filmed was coming out, and it was like everything was working out. I was like, okay, but foundationally, I wasn't great, and my eating disorder was pretty bad. At this point, I used it as a control mechanism, and I was very, very small at the time. Wasn't in a healthy place. A lot of anxiety, insomnia. So on sort of foundationally, things weren't good, but structurally around me, things were looking amazing, and I was kind of holding everything together. So when COVID hit, it was just like because the relationship ended and the music ended and everything just ended. The film couldn't come out because there was no one to come to the premieres, and it was just awful. And when I was starting to come out the other side, when the world started to move again, I was like, I want to go back to boxing. And I think, we all went through a lot through that COVID period, and it made us think, rethink structures, plans, everything. And that was, one of the things for me was like, I want to do this again. Even if I never fight, even if I don't get to, I just want to get really, really good, like really good, technically, like beautiful at this sport because I love it. It makes me happy. It keeps me fit, keeps me strong. And so I did some research, but a lot of the gyms were still not open yet. And I was living in another place in London. But the next day I walked through the park and there was a guy just doing pads in the park. And I was like, I see. You're a funny guy. And so I just went and got his number and we started training together, I think like the next day. And for about a year, year and a half, I just trained with him and I was like, let's go all the way back to basics. Because everybody saw that I had sort of a natural affinity, there was a few steps that were getting skipped. And I wanted to go back to the basics. I wanted to learn again everything from the ground up, footwork, defenses, head movement, everything from the ground up. And after about a year and a half of us two working together, I then got a job at Dream Boys Male Strip Show, and I was on tour a lot. I was basically running things, helping them run things. Well, it's just the boys and me, and I was their go-to. I was also the go-to for the owner. I was also in a relationship with one of the performers, so life really changed. And for the first part of that, everything was amazing. I was very happy in the relationship, very happy in the company. And then like natural things with works and jobs and things, I grew, evolved, changed. It wasn't working for me anymore. The relationship I've I've talked about a bit on my social media. I don't really want to give him the airtime, to be honest, but it ended badly. I was not safe. He threatened to hit me, so I had to exit quite quickly. And I was living in London in Stratford in a beautiful flat with my gorgeous dog. And within a 2 week window, I was out of there in my mum's car driving to Devon to move in with her. And oh, I've skipped a step. Okay, I need to go back. A really, really vital, important step. So, the reason I was able to leave, because the relationship was getting worse and worse and worse. So, obviously, it doesn't go from zero to threatening to punch someone in the face. It was getting progressively worse. And in the November, of 2022. Where are we? Yeah, 2022, November of 2022. Um, Life is awful, hard. I'd left the company. Things with my relationship were awful. Internally for me, things are not good. And I was like, I'm going to fight. It was earlier than the November. November was the fight. So it must have been 2 months before that, 2.5 months before that, probably around the September time, end of August, early September. I was like, I'm going to fight. I don't care. I don't care anymore. I don't care if I have to sign a waiver that says if I die, I die. I need to do this. I need to do this for myself. I need to do this for, I need a focus. I need a purpose. And so I signed up for the White Collar Club in London. I was already training and doing some work for Gymbox at the time, and that's when they hold where they hold the sessions. And I was like, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And I loved it. I loved the structure it gave me. I loved how hard I trained. I love that it pushed me out of my comfort zone. I love that I met new people. And so then in the November in 2022, I stepped into the ring for the first time. And to me, I was very lucky because my heart behaved itself through that camp. Apart from getting COVID, a flu or something, it might have been COVID. When things got a bit tricky in the middle of camp. But for the most part, my heart was very well behaved, which was lucky. I was a bit heavier then. But I made some bargains with God. I was like, let me do it once. Just let me do it once. Let me get through this camp smooth with no dramas with my health. Just let me get through, please, 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 please. Just once and I'll let it go. And then I'll just let it go. Just let it go. And that's what happened. The morning of the fight, the medical was at about 1. And as soon as he knew what my condition was, so he did all the checks and he was like, I'm happy with your vitals. I'm happy with your blood pressure. I'm happy with everything. You can fight. I burst into tears. I was like, I don't care what happens now. I genuinely don't because I've won, because I get to do this. I've waited 14 years and I'll get to do this. And what it taught me was wild because I've been singing in huge, huge shows for the best part of my life at this point. And one of the things was like when I did The Voice, for example, that was a big day for me. My nerves were nerving all day. I was anxiety all day. I didn't eat. I was drinking so much honey and lemon, thinking that that would be the thing that would hold me together. But I was like, I had learned to live in a state of anxiety and adrenaline. And I could sing that way because I'd trained my body to do that. But obviously, it burns a lot of energy and it's very different to when you get punched in the face. So I was like, I don't have the option to let myself live in that state on fight day. I have to manage myself, which was a huge observation within myself that I was like, hang on, that means that I do have power over thought. I do have power over my mind. I do have power over my choices. And I was like, huh, wild. So this was like all kind of unraveling on the day, as well as like the things that I sort of learned about myself in the camp. And I stepped in the ring and I remember feeling like so happy. I wasn't really nervous. I probably should have been more nervous. But anyway, fight starts. We're both doing pretty good. And she catches me with something really heavy in the first round. And I walk back to my corner. But in my head, getting knocked out wasn't even considered. So I just carried on and went and sat in my corner. And my coach was like talking to me. I couldn't tell you what he was saying. I was just staring through him. And I was like, I have two choices right now because what the fuck am I doing? What am I doing? I've never been hit that hard in my life. And I was like, okay, right. I've got two choices. I can either throw in the towel and say, this is just too hard. Like, this is harder than anything I've ever done in my life. I can't do it. Or it's 4 more minutes of your life. And it was like a switch went off and I was up. And my coach was like, are you okay? Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And he was like, they were about to pull you because you weren't speaking. I was like, sorry, just me, myself, and I needed to figure some stuff out. And then I was back in. And obviously I was a bit spangled from the first round. So I was mostly on the offense in the second round. And then the third round I came back alive again. And my right hand came back into the story. She won. I wasn't surprised, but I jumped up and down in that ring like I just won the Olympics because I had achieved something that I wanted to do for 14 years and I did it. And it created a neurological pathway for me in my head that I can do hard things and I can do things that I set out to do because my journey had got lost. My choices had got lost. Obviously, I was in this relationship that I thought was going to be like the be all and end all for me, and it was falling apart. And my whole life around me felt like it was falling apart. But I was like, but I have this. And this means that I can rely on me. I can trust me. I'm stronger than I think I am. I'm fitter than I think I am. I'm braver than I think I am. Da, da, da. And I was riding a high like I've never ridden before. And I was like, I get why people are obsessed with this. Anyway, I got home that night and my ex wouldn't even look at me. It was the weirdest thing. He was really off because I don't think he liked when I was shining. Um, and he just turned to me when we got into bed and went, I could do that. I was like, you probably could, mate. Thanks for sharing this with me. Um, but I was like, okay. Anyway, after that, I was like, if that can make me that happy on a time in my life where I'm not happy at all, I never want to lose this ever again. I never want to be without this. Um, Even just doing pad work, doing drills, whatever it is, I never want to be without this again. So I thought actually around that time, I was like, actually, it'd be really cool to become a coach. Like, it would be really cool to become a coach. Anyway, that was the November. We get through Christmas and then January, things take a turn for the worst. As I already said, early February, I'm in a car, in my mum's car, driving down to Devon. Whole life is in tatters. And I got to Devon and I was like, I'm never, ever, ever going to do anything that doesn't make me happy ever again. Because when I got here, it was like going to rehab. I was cut away from everything I knew. I'd never grown up here. My mum had moved here 2 years before, so it was a whole new world. So I went and got my badges, trained to be an England boxing coach, and I just started to train and train and train and train because it was the only real thing that I had. So I started to get really, really, really good, like way better than I was for my fight. And but I didn't care about how I looked to everyone else or how good I was for everyone else. It was how it made me feel about myself because I'd come away from something that made me feel so diminished and I'd felt diminished within myself because of a whole heap of other things. I didn't like who I was anymore. I didn't like the person I looked at in the mirror. But when I boxed, I liked myself. Every time I showed up for a session, every time I pushed through something hard, every time I went beyond where I was comfortable, I liked myself that little bit more. And every time I booked a new class, was teaching a new class, like boxing built me up again from the ground. I was in tatters and it started to form this person that I was really proud of. And by the end of 2024, I was teaching in 6 different gyms in 6 different towns, one-to-one clients, classes. I had my level 2 England boxing badge. But I was probably overdoing it a little bit. I'd pushed myself to like got to Christmas and I was just like crying in the car all the time because I was like, I'm so tired, I can't do this. Because being a boxing coach is a physical job. And I was like, I need to start working smarter, not harder. Now, in the summertime around August, September, I'd had a conversation with a sports agent, somebody who I owe a lot to. He's more than a sports agent, he's so much more than a sports agent. Um, but I had a call with him and I said, um, this is what I'd like. I'd like to be a boxing presenter. I'd like to be at the fights. I'd like to be talking to the fighters because the mentality around fighting that I had discovered for myself, I was like, hang on, I'm just little Miss Nobody. I just did this because it was a personal goal. What about these pros? What about these people who dedicate their life to it? What about the people who do the 12 rounds? What about the people who go through this experience and like their mentality is insane. Like they've got to have like the like how do they move through this and also the way that boxing can impact your everyday life and your everyday life can impact boxing. And I was fascinated by the psychology. I was fascinated by how it can help you heal, help you grow, help you. I love it. So I was like, this is what I want to do. And he put me in touch with the editor of the Voice newspaper and said, speak to this guy. Anyway, I had a couple of calls with the editor of the Voice newspaper in London. He was just like, I like you. I like your energy. Come and write for me. And I was like, what is happening? Because I'd also done some writing before. I'd written articles before about other topics. And and then February in 2025, I was at my first show. It was, well, actually, it was a press conference for the all-female card through Boxer, Tasha Jonas and Lauren Price. And I remember walking into the room and it was like the biggest imposter syndrome moment in the world because I walked in and I had done red carpets for film premieres, doing things like that. So there's a real structure to that. So the fact that I like walked in, got my wristband, and then I was like in the room with the fighters, I was like, am I in the wrong room? Am I lost? And I couldn't believe how accessible it was. I was so shocked. Anyway, had this experience and I just was quite honest. I grabbed this girl and I was like, hey, you look like you know what you're doing. And asked her for some advice and she put me towards someone and he was like, just do this, do this, do this. Somebody who worked for Boxer. and then connected with one of the guys from Boxer, and then it just, then it literally, I think it was like a few days later, I was at Wembley for my first fight, and I've never felt more like a kid in a candy shop, like a fan who got lucky, and like I was just supposed to be somewhere. Like I've never felt more at home in a space with certain people. Like it just all makes sense to me so much. And that could be because of the journey that I've been on. It could be because I'm just so passionate about it. It could be because it means so much to me because of what it's done to me, given me, shown me, and how it's helped me develop into somebody I really like. And that sort of got us to here today, where I've been to quite a lot of experiences now, and the podcast is growing. And for me now, the sky's the limit. It's there are so many things I want to achieve in this sport and do in this sport, and I feel very honoured and lucky that I get to be a part of this sport. And I'm still singing. I'm still singing. I'm actually going to a show in about 30 minutes. Um, but I do that now for my own joy. Um, I lost my way with that because my voice felt like it became everybody else's because I stopped remembering why I started. And all the lessons I've learned in music has reminded me to stay grounded in everything that I'm doing with boxing, but also every time you get back in the gym, I try and train boxing. I'd train boxing every day if I could. At the moment, I'm probably training boxing 4 times a week, 5 times a week. And it doesn't matter what you do, who you talk to, what your experiences are. You then go and put your gloves on, or you go to a sparring session, you get humbled, and you remember that everything is, what you put in, you get out. Every time you show up, even if it's hard, even if it's a bad day, even if you're tired, boxing has reminded me that it's all about the grit and determination. It's all about biting down on the gum shield. It's all about the rest days. It's all about how you treat yourself. And that bleeds into my everyday. And that helps me in my relationships. That helps me in my family. That helps me in my work life. Everything that boxing has given me has made my life better. And that's why I would like to give back to the sport as best I can. And I continue to coach as well. But also just spread its word, talk positively of it, and yeah, just put my little spin on why it's so important to me, and have those conversations with people that I'm excited to have, because I know there'll be other people out there who are excited to have those conversations too. Hopefully. Anyway, um, I'll leave that there for now. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me, DM me, or whatever. But I hope you've found interest in my story. Oh, if you're wondering what happened after my first fight, I did exactly what I said I'd do with God, and I let it go. I had my one and done. Um, I actually dropped a lot of weight after that fight, and I think I would much prefer fighting at a lighter weight. And if I fought now, I'd be an absolute weapon in comparison to who I was then. But I let it go. I let it go because I think there's been many a training session that I've struggled or fainted or just haven't had, like, sometimes the symptoms of fatigue, breathlessness, brain fog, all the things that you don't need. And I feel very at peace. I feel very, very at peace that I got to do it at least once. That was my dog barking. Anyway, I'm going to stop now. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. And hopefully you'll stick around for the ride. Bye.